Welcome to the Family Law Frontline.
Welcome back to the Family Law Frontline with Fedor Kozlov. Fedor is the founding partner and chief litigator at the law office of Fedor Kozlov, PC. He's got over a decade of experience in Illinois family law, handling high-stakes cases involving custody, property division, domestic violence, as well as reproductive rights, which is something we're going to be talking about today. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. We're going to explore a growing legal dilemma, and that is what happens to frozen embryos when a couple divorces. Interesting topic here, Fedor. Welcome back.
Very interesting topic, Kevin. Thank you for having me. And it's dear to my heart, this particular topic, because I can proudly say that as of today, the precedent that controls the embryos comes from appellate court decision. It's called in re Katsap, Katsap. And this is the case that my office handled. I was the lead attorney for the trial and for the Court of Appeals. And I'd like to talk a little bit about this case today because I think it's a fascinating case as far as the facts and then as far as the legal field and the outcome of it. So as I said, it's a public information. People can look it up. Again, it's the matter is called Katsap, Katsap. We represented the mother, and the case actually started in New York. So the case started in a different country, Israel. So both parents got married there. They signed a document. It's called Ketubah. Pretty much it's like a marital agreement between a husband and wife. And, they lived there for a while and then they moved to New York. They could not have a child for whatever reasons. So what they did, they froze embryos. And the embryos were kept in New England clinic where they, when you have embryos, you have to pay rent pretty much for the embryos to be stored, taken care of, things like that. Yeah, it's a contract. And if you don't pay, they're going to dispose them. So they went through the whole procedure and they had a child, which was, of course, very exciting for the family. It took time, money, effort, and they have a child. Then let's call it irreconcilable differences occurred between the mother and the father. And she moved, and I'm skipping some details that not relevant to this particular topic. She moved here to Illinois. She lived in Illinois. And, the whole battle, there were multiple issues about custody, because he stayed in New York, she's in Illinois, how we're going to do this over border custody things, and then child support, they had division of business. One of the things was who's going to keep the embryos. So now, very interesting. We go to the trial judge, and mom says, listen, I think she was over 40 at that time. I am over 40 years of age. I cannot have another child. He can. So let me keep the embryos. I'm willing to pay for them. And I don't want anything like, I'm not going to ask him for child support, nothing like that. The father says, well, I don't want my DNA to be, used to have another child. And if you have another child, I would like to see that child just like I have this child. That's number one. If she's going to use that DNA, I don't want to have another child with her. We're going through a divorce process, and I don't want to be on the hook for child support. So he was saying that either destroy the embryos or you can donate them to a younger couple who cannot have a baby. So the trial judge ruled in his favor. The trial judge said that that's his right, that is his DNA, and he should not be paying child support. He should not be, pretty much, if you think about it, that's your DNA, that's your child, you know.
Right.
And as a father of the child, I want to see where the child is, what's going on with my child, things like that. But at the same time, I don't really, I have a right not to have a child. So it's like, it's almost you being forced to have a child. But mom said, listen, it's not like I can go and have another child now, and I cannot have another embryo if you destroy this. So we filed immediate appeal. We asked for the court to stay its decision, so the clinic would not destroy the embryos. And then another interesting issue, I will just touch slightly on it. There was a jurisdiction. So he lives in New York. Mm-hmm. She is in Illinois. And if you remember, the embryos are in New England. Mm-hmm. So, which court is going to decide the embryos? Luckily to us, Illinois court took jurisdiction over it because the case was decided in Illinois. So Illinois Court of Appeals said, we're going to decide this case. That was also during COVID era, and you could not appear in front of the judge, so you have to appear by Zoom. And there is no law. Like it was, we all talk about Roe v. Wade and things like that, about, when the woman can have an abortion. There's a lot of law and precedents about that, but nothing about embryos.
Right.
United States Supreme Court yet have to have a decision in regards to this issue. And I think the issue is very ripe, because when I was preparing my appellate brief, there were cases that were coming from different states, including one case from Illinois. But the case from Illinois was from many years ago and a little bit different in facts. So pretty much when I argued this case, I had to answer questions from the appellate judges about all these other cases and which case we should take in consideration, how this case is different from that case. For those who familiar with how the Court of Appeals work and things like that, courts and judges like to have rules, and they like to have formulas, and they like to have tests. So this court, for my case, came up with its own test. It consists of 6 different factors, but one of the biggest factors that went our favor was that she cannot have another child. So if you weigh the interests between the father and the mother, you look at their age, ability to have another child, things like that. And because our client could not have another child, and she, truthfully testified, incredibly testified that she would use these embryos in order to have another child and would not destroy it. And she would be responsible. She would pay for the storage. She would pay for the maintenance, and she would take care of it. The court decided in her favor. So the court essentially overruled the trial judge decision and said that in this particular case, the embryos shall stay with the mother, because otherwise the father would just destroy it or, give it to somebody else, and this woman will not be able to have a child. Now, a question came up, of course, what are we going to do with the father? Who's going to, is he on the hook for the child support? And the court said no.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting decision. So for those fathers out there who, unless you consent, unless you say that, yes, I willingly want to have this child with this person and I will pay child support, you don't have to pay child support. Now, why the trial judge decided against us to begin with, when this couple created Embryos, they signed the contract. That contract was placed with the facility that kept the embryos, and the judge looked at this issue from the contract standpoint and said, listen, when these two people signed this contract, they signed it with intent to have children. But then the life goes on, and one of them who signed this contract doesn't want to have a child anymore. So this person, so this contract is no longer valid, and that's why it's null and void, and you can pretty much do whatever you want to do with the embryos. He should not be responsible, and he should not be responsible, to pay child support and stuff like that. So the Court of Appeals said it's not a contract law. It's when people get married, if you think about it, and that's, if you remember the very beginning of this discussion, they also signed a document called Ketubah. Ketubah is a document in Israel that says that if a man takes another woman as his wife, he promises to the parents that he'll take care of her and he will never divorce her. And if he divorces her, he shall pay the parents of the woman a certain amount of money. So that contract was for $2 million, believe it or not. Yeah. So you take my daughter, and if you divorce her, you gotta pay me $2 million. The appellate court, by the way, said it's not enforceable. No surprise.
Yeah, it's from a different country. Is that why? Yeah,
Can you imagine?
No,
Yeah,
no, I cannot.
So it's not an enforceable contract. So you can marry whoever you want, you can divorce whoever you want, you can date whoever you want, but you don't have to pay money to anybody. But at the same time, the Court of Appeals said, yes, they signed the contract for these embryos, just like they made promises to each other that they will take care of each other for the rest of their lives. But it's not a contract law. And we have to look at where people are at the time when the issue comes in. So, and because there are like certain amount of embryos only exist, and you want to, somebody wants to keep them, somebody wants to destroy them, and you have to look at the intent. So you have to look, why do you want to destroy them? Why do you not want to keep them? Things like that. So for her, the Court of Appeal said it's obvious she wants to have another child. And it's obvious if we take these embryos away from her, she will not be able to have a child. And that issue outweighs the interest of the father. So this case is right now precedent in the state of Illinois. People talk about it. During the hearings, there were a lot of people who just wanted to listen to it. People cite it. The attorneys that represent the father petitioned Illinois Supreme Court to review this case. Illinois Supreme Court at that point rejected. So the Court of Appeals have to review your cases. When you go up to the Illinois Supreme Court, the Court of the United States, Supreme Court of the United States, they make their own decision if they want this case and they don't want it. So they said, we don't want this case. But because the issue is so, it's all over the place. But I think with the new laws and everything that's going on right now in the society, like I said, the law is, family law is always developing, and it's always interesting to follow. I'm very excited, either for me personally to have another case like that and maybe argue it with the Illinois Supreme Court, or maybe some other lawyer would be able to take it upstairs and argue it. But this is a precedent right now, and it remains until this day. So already for at least 4 or 5 years. There was only one.
Other states, sorry to interrupt, but do other states kind of look at this?
The other states will look at it. Yes,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like I was looking at other state cases, and you look at those. That's why it was so exciting, because there's no set rule, there's no statute about it. So the legislature didn't come up with anything yet to say the embryos are the contract law. Embryos is embryo is a child, or whatever it is. There's no state legislature. We only have a few cases, and the other cases that we can gather coming from different states, and that's when you look into different factors. But right now, the law, the set of rules is in Katsap, which means we look at the mother, we look at the father, we weigh their interests and decide who outweighs who. Two, the person who gets the embryos has to pay for it. They're yours. Maintenance, upkeeping, all of that. Three, if you go through the process of having a baby, you are 100% responsible for making payments. The other person is not. And four, especially for the fathers, of course, if you do not agree voluntarily to pay child support, nobody can come back to you and say, you have to pay child support. And five, of course, sometimes different things happen medically with the child, and sometimes you need the blood from the father or some kind of assistance and things like that. Again, it's only on voluntary basis. Nobody's going to make you do that. But again, at the same time, you have to remember that if you choose not to participate in the child's life, you are the stranger to this child for the rest of the life, and you cannot come in later and say, "Hey, I want to establish my father's rights," because you're just a donor for that purposes. So the other thing is that the appellate court said that we're going to leave some contract law to this. So let's say you have a couple that have embryos, right? And whether or not they already have a child doesn't matter. If the couple goes through a divorce, or let's say they're not even married, they just have the embryos, everything else is controlled by the contract law. So if you want to keep the embryos for later, because at this point in your life, you're not sure if you want to have another child, or maybe you're in good terms and you're thinking maybe later, it's all about the contract law from this point. So if you're getting divorced and you're going through this marital settlement agreement, you will still list the embryos and who's responsible to pay what, but the decision to keep them or not to keep them, it'll be reserved. So pretty much we're going to talk about a little bit later when we have a question about it. And that's the case. It was a fascinating case.
Very.
Many days in trial, many disputes, many things, but the embryo issue so far, I still think it's it's developing, and I'm very excited when to see when Illinois Supreme Court will take a look at it.
Absolutely. Wow, that's very fascinating case. Very interesting stuff. Really appreciate you sharing that with us. And that's it for today's episode of the Family Law Frontline. If you're dealing with an embryo custody dispute, or you really want to understand the legal options there, talk to Fedor. Visit lawyer-il.com to connect. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review. We got lots more great stuff coming your way in the future. Fedor, always great to have you here. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was truly very, very interesting story.
Thank you, Kevin. See you later.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.